everybody, I'm Leah of seejanedrill. Now, is this your first time here? Because if it is, I just want to welcome you. Now, today's video has to do with questions that our viewers have sent in, and they want the answers to their questions. And I'm going to provide them coming up next. Question number one is, I don't have a whole lot of time, Leah, and I want to paint a room in my house. Can I use that all-in-one paint and primer? Okay, so the answer is, and it's, there's a little caveat to the answer, and that is yes, you can, but here's the thing. All-in-one primer and paint, no such thing. There is no primer in all-in-one primer and paint. That's just really a marketing thing that they do, because they know that people don't really necessarily like to prime and then to paint. And so if you can really do it all in one, it sounds very attractive. So keep that in mind. So what is it about all-in-one paint and primer that makes it different than just regular paint? Well, it's a few things. It's marketing, like I said before, and then the second thing is it's thicker paint. It has a higher build-up, so it's able to hide more, but it doesn't do the same thing that primer does. Now, I've got to tell you quite honestly, okay? I'm a big advocate to using primer and then paint. Now, why is that? Because primer hides things. It gives you a consistent look before you put on that top coat, but it hides things like flashing, water spots, and it adds to the longevity of the paint that you put on top of the primer, and it gives it what's called a real depth of color. Now, the final thought I want to leave you with this question is, there is no primer in self-priming paint. Number two, I've seen people using a bonding agent with plastering a wall. Do I have to use a bonding agent if I'm just using joint compound? You know, that's a really good question, and I'm glad I have an opportunity to answer it for you. Here it goes. Joint compound has an adhesive in their recipe, okay? Because that's the way you got to think of joint compound. You got a lot of stuff going on in joint compound, a lot of different ingredients there. So you don't need a bonding agent with joint compound. Now, when it comes to plastering, you basically just have two things. You've got limestone, it's crushed up, and you've got gypsum. That's it. And so you have to use a bonding agent to get the old plaster and the new plaster to bond to each other. So the next question is, Leah, I have tools around the house, but I kind of want to get into woodworking. How do you suggest I get started? What tools should I purchase? This is what I'll say about that question, because it's an interesting question, and it really kind of depends on how you're going to approach woodworking. Now, maybe you're wondering what I mean by that, and it's this. There are purists, and all they use is hand tools. They don't use any electric power tools for woodworking. So if you're a purist, what you're going to be looking to purchase is very, very different from people like me, okay? Because I don't just rely on hand tools. I like hand tools, but I also like power tools. Decide, are you going to be a purist and just use hand tools? Or are you going to use a combination of hand tools and power tools? And don't jump into it headstrong, because what happens is woodworking tools are really expensive. Let me give you an example. This is my dovetail saw, and I use it for cutting dovetails, and it's made by Veritas. And what I will tell you is this saw costs, I think, like $70. So can you see it gets pricey? That's just one saw, and so that's why it makes sense to move very slowly in terms of purchasing tools. Now, before I move on, I'm going to do this. I'm going to link a video below in the description, and it's to a Rob Kosman video. If you don't know who he is, he's a YouTuber. He's a Canadian woodworker, okay? And I think he even has his own line of tools, hand tools. And what I want to say is this. In this video, he shows you how you can cut dovetails with just the most basic tools. Check it out, because it's really amazing. Sometimes it's not so much what you own, but it's the knowledge up here that shows you what you need to do, okay? You can get great results with, some inexpensive tools if you just know what to do.
So the next question is, Leah at my local nursery, they sell peat moss and topsoil by the yard. How much is in a yard?
What's a yard? What's a yard of peat moss? What's a yard of topsoil? What's a yard of gravel or river rock? Leah, what the heck is a yard? Well, a yard is 3 feet wide by 3 feet in depth and 3 feet in height. It's a cubic yard, and that's how a lot of building material is sold. So when you go to like a nursery and you're just going to buy some gravel or some topsoil, they'll want to know how many yards you need, and a yard is a cubic yard. Hey Leah, I would like to get into construction and I'm not really certain how to go about it. Can you give me some suggestions? This is a great question. This is really my wheelhouse because, you know, I was a trades instructor. So here's the thing. This is why it's a good question. How can you take your DIY skills and turn them into a career? One word: apprenticeship. And so here's the thing that a lot of people don't know. If you're in the trades, you know this. Apprenticeship is the other 4-year degree. But the big difference is, especially nowadays, when everybody is worried about student debt, when you do an apprenticeship, they pay you to learn your skill. And it generally takes 4 years. It takes 4 years, but during those 4 years, they pay you a living wage. The most important thing is you have to decide what appeals to you. What do you like doing? And then you have to apply to that apprenticeship program because you know that there are a lot of different trades. There are iron workers, sheet metal workers, there's plumbers, electricians, carpenters, bricklayers, cement masons, and it goes on and on and on. So find out what it is that you enjoy doing. Maybe you enjoy it all. And you know what? I'll tell you something. If you enjoy doing all aspects of construction, you may want to think about the labor's union because they do a little bit of everything. But if there's something you really love, like carpentry, well, then I would suggest you check out the carpenter's union, okay? So that's the first thing you need to do. Figure out what it is you like. Then the next step is, believe it or not, and a lot of people are going to say, oh, I don't like to hear that, but it's so very true, and I don't want to steer you wrong. And that is, you got to brush up on your math. You know, some trades are very demanding when it comes to math. The electricians, oh my goodness, you really have to know your math because there are formulas that you have to know if you're going to be an electrician. And then there are trades that are less demanding with math, but the bottom line is, the common thread with all the trades are math. So take a night class, you know, or study on your own. Just brush up on your math before you actually take a test for an apprenticeship enrollment, okay? So let me just say one last thing about working in construction, and that is this. The pay, it's not shabby. You get paid really well in construction, especially if you go through an apprenticeship program and you get your journeyman card, okay? You can look forward to a life of making a livable wage, beyond a livable wage. And then the other thing is you don't have to worry about student debt, okay? Now, to tie all this up, I want to close by saying I'm going to place a link in the description below to apprenticeship programs that may help you in your area. I'm also going to place links to Rob Kosman, his video on, you know, cutting dovetails with minimal tools. The last thing I want to say before I say goodbye is this. You know, here at seejanedrill, it's not just the YouTube channel, but we've got a website. We have other social media platforms that we use like Facebook and Twitter and Snapchat and all like that. And we get lots of questions. We get so many questions that I couldn't possibly answer them all in a week's time because it amounts to thousands, okay? So if I don't get to your question or I don't comment on your comment, it isn't because I don't have a desire to do it. It's just that I don't have enough time in the day to do it. So we try to get to as many people as we possibly can. Now, if you have a question you've got to have it answered, you got to have it answered right away, then consider supporting us on Patreon, because we answer everybody that asks questions on Patreon. This is Leah saying you can do this. See you next time.